In this video, we're going to be taking a look at fractions and decimals on the number line, and a couple things that is important to know with fractions and decimals on the number line. First of all, fractions and decimals can also be written on a number line, obviously, if we're doing a lesson on this. And it's important to think about fractions and decimals, and remember that they are related to each other. Okay, a fraction can be turned into a decimal, and a decimal can also be turned into a fraction. Okay, for example, if I have the fraction of 8/10, 8 over 10, that can also be changed to a decimal of 8/10. Okay, so fractions and decimals are representing the same thing, just in a different way. Okay, so if I take a look at this number line from 0 to 1, what fraction would go with each decimal? Okay, and tenths. Okay, so 1/10 here, 2/10 here, and so on, all the way down to 9/10. Okay, let's take a look at some problems where we're ordering fractions and decimals on the number line, and being able to order them from least to greatest will also be able to help us being able to order them on the number line will also be able to help us order them from least to greatest. Now, it's saying place these numbers on the number line, then write them in order from least to greatest. Now, if we place them correctly on the number line, we can easily write them in order from least to greatest. Okay, now it says the best way to start is to change everything to tenths. Okay, in other words, if you're writing out your own number line, it's really simple for you to figure this out if you divide it up into 10 segments or into tenths. So from 0 to 1, since I'm not dealing with any mixed numbers, all of these fractions and decimals are going to fall in between 0 and 1. Now, the point that we need to figure out is, where do they fall? Okay, now 6/10 is very, very simple. Okay, and what I can do, I can see that since this is divided up into 6/10, this 0.6 also equals 6/10, just like this. So pretty simple here. We have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and 6/10. We'll put our point here, put 0.6. Okay, now a little tricky whenever we have 4/5. However, what we could do is we could get out our calculator and figure out what 4/5 equals as far as a decimal. So what we do is we take 4 and we divide that by 5. Oops, let me clear this out here. Do 4 divided by 5, and that's going to give me 0.8. Okay, so I know that 0.8 actually equals 8/10. So pretty simple there. Okay, so 4/5 equals 8/10. So I know this is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, and this is going to be 8/10. Okay, but remember it was 4/5, so we're going to write it this way, 4 over 5. Now 3/10 is pretty simple. It gives it to us right in the tenths there. So we have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. Use a different color ink for this. 3/10. Okay, now what we're going to have to do is we need to change our 72 hundredths. We're going to make that into a decimal. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide that numerator by the denominator. That's going to give us 0.72, or we could have just pretty much easily figured that out, because 72 hundredths looks just like this. Okay, now whenever we have a number falling in the hundredths or thousandths, what we need to do is we need to look at that very first number. Now that's a 7 there. Okay, that represents 7/10. So we know right here on my number line is going to be 7/10. All right, now we have 2 hundredths, so that means our 72 hundredths is going to go slightly to the right of that 7/10 mark. Okay, not going to be exact here, but pretty much right about there. Okay, so that would be 72 hundredths. So you can see changing everything to a decimal will be pretty simple. Now ordering these from least to greatest, we can just go from left to right on my number line. I have 3/10 as the least number. Then I have 0.6 as the next one. 72 hundredths. Even though they're big numbers, it's not the greatest. And finally 4/5. So you can see changing everything to a decimal, thinking about it in tenths makes it very, very simple to order fractions and decimals on a number line. Okay, what I want you to do now is get out your pencil and math journal, and I want you to write these fractions and decimals in your math journal, and also write out your number line just like I have, okay, in sets of 10. Okay, so this is 10 segments from 0 to 1, 10 segments from 0 to 2. We've kind of run out of room here, but it's going to keep on going after our 2 here. So let's write this out, and we'll work on this together. Okay, now what we need to figure out is, first of all, we need to figure out how we can group these numbers. Now, we have 2 and 4/20. Now, right away, we know that 2 is our whole number, so that means it's going to go to the right of our 2. And then 4/20, what we need to figure out is what that would be in decimal form. So I'm going to take my 4/20. I'm going to take 4. I'm going to divide that by 20. Now I know that gives me 2/10. Okay, so this mixed number can actually be converted to 2 and 2/10. Pretty simple here. What I can do is I see my 2, that's 1/10, and that's 2/10. So I'm going to put it right here, and I'm just going to write it underneath since I don't have any room, 2 and 4/20. Okay, my next one, 95 hundredths. Now we know that is a 0 and 95 hundredths, but what we want to do, we want to take a look at that 9. That 9 represents 9/10. Now on my number line, my 9/10 is, that's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. Okay, which falls right here. And 5 hundredths, that shows it's between, right in the middle between 9/10 and 1 whole. So I'm going to put my point right here on my number line, representing 0 and 95 hundredths. Okay, now I come to my 18/20. A little tricky to figure out, and especially when my number line is divided up into tenths. But what I will do is convert this to a decimal. I'm going to take 18, take my numerator, divide it by my denominator, and that's going to give me 9/10. We know easily what 9/10 looks like. I'm going to use a different color of ink. 9/10 can be put right here on my number line. We can see it's just to the left of 95 hundredths. So I'm going to put 18 over 20. Okay, finally, 1 and 375 thousandths. Now I have my 1 here. Okay, now I see my first number, the number in the tenths, is 3. So I have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, which comes right here. Okay, then I can see that 75 hundredths. In other words, 75, think about it with money. 75 cents is actually 3/4 of a dollar. Okay, so what I will do is, that means it's going to be 3/4 of the way down between my 3/10 and my 4/10. Okay, so I'm going to put our point just right about here, about 3/4 of the way down. So 1 and 375 thousandths. Okay, can be a little tricky, but it's important to break everything down. If you don't know, to a decimal makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so now we can go from left to right on my number line. So I can see that from least we can have 18/20. And then from here we have 0, 95 hundredths. Then we have 1 and 375 thousandths. You can see it's important that even though I've converted these to decimals, some of these, I'm still writing them in their original form. Then finally 2 and 4/20. Now I'm going to do something that I usually do not do. I'm going to give you the option. You can either work along with me in this problem. If However, if you feel really confident and you feel like you know this skill very well, you can pause this recording and work the problem out all by yourself, and then press play and I'll have the answers for you. Okay, so if you're going to pause the video, I want you to pause the video now. If you're not going to, obviously you can work along with me. Okay, so what we have here, we have 1 and 1/20. Once again, we can see that my number line is divided up into tenths. Okay, so we have 1 and 1/20. Right away, we know it's going to go to the right of our 1. However, we need to figure out what 1/20 looks like as far as a decimal. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take our numerator 1 and divide it by the denominator of 20. Okay, and it's 0.05, or 0 and 5 hundredths. Okay, so what we need to do, we need to figure out where that falls in between our 1 and 1/10. Okay, because it doesn't even fall that far away. It falls somewhere in between there. Now we know that 5 hundredths, that's not very far away from that 1. It's not even a tenth of the way down. So think about dividing this into 10 little spaces between my 1 and my 1/10. Okay, and then even smaller than that. So pretty much right at to the right of that 1 there. Okay, pretty close to that 1. We'll have 1 and 1/20. Okay, is where that will fall. My next one is pretty simple. It's 7/10. So what I can do, it's 0 and 7/10. So right away I know 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10. So we can put my 0.7 right here. Okay, my next one, 1 and 9/20. Now we know the 1 is a whole number, pretty simple here. We need to figure out what that 9/20 actually represents. So what we will do, we will change it to a decimal. 9 divided by 20. I'm sorry, let's do this again. 9 divided by 20 is going to give us 45 hundredths. So that mixed number can be written as, let me use a different color ink here, 1 and 45 hundredths. So we have our decimal here. Now we know the 4 is 4/10. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, which is right here. Now that 5 represents, it's going to be in between, pretty much right in between the 4/10 and 5/10 here. So we'll put our point right there representing 1 and 9/20. Okay, now for my final one, 0 and 625 thousandths. We know right away the 6 represents 6/10, so we'll go down 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10. I'll use a different color ink here. So 6/10, which is right here. Now 25, think about that as a quarter of the way down, or 1/4 of the way down between my 6/10 and 7/10. We'll go just about right here. Write it underneath here, 0 and 625 thousandths. Okay, just to the left of that 7/10. Now that I have these numbers written on my number line, I can order them from least to greatest, and you can see I have them written down at the bottom here, 0 and 625 thousandths. I have 7/10, 1 and 1/20, and also 1 and 9/20. So the real key for you, key tip of the day, is you want to change your fractions to decimals. If you're not quite sure, okay, then you can order them from least to greatest. If you have any questions about this concept, please come and see me.